All right. Hello to everyone watching the live stream broadcast of this event and to those watching the replay of this event. My name is Stephen Lane. I'm a member of Indy Pride's Education Committee and the chair of the LGBTQ Committee for the Indianapolis Public Library and the Special Collections Librarian at Central Library. Thank you for joining this Indy Pride Education Series event, What You Should Know, Legislative Update with the ACLU of Indiana. This programming is brought to you by donors just like you, so consider giving to Indy Pride today to support our work and mission to bring programming and community events that uplift and unite the LGBTQ plus community. I'd like to introduce our guest tonight, Kit Malone, who is an advocate and educator and oversees the ACLU of Indiana's LGBTQ Rights Project. This includes TEAP, Transgender Education and Advocacy Program, a public outreach effort to identify transgender advocates and arm them with the tools to educate and engage their communities and lawmakers. In her time at the ACLU of Indiana, Kit has been a leader in the effort to defeat numerous legislative attacks on the rights of queer and trans Hoosiers. In 2019, she was inducted into Indy Pride's Hall of Fame for this work, and in 2020 was named Community Leader of the Year by the Indy Rainbow Chamber of Commerce. Just this year in 2021, Kit won the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative's Trailblazer Award for Civic Engagement. A former high school teacher, Kit started her advocacy career as a community organizer for the Freedom Indiana campaign. While there, she helped organize local battles to successfully pass non-discrimination protections in over 12 municipalities. Kit was instrumental in the development of Indy Pride's annual trans-focused event, #TransGlam, and co-organized the first transgender marching contingent in the Indy Pride Parade's history. Kit currently also serves as a member of Indy's Race and Cultural Relations Leadership Network. So welcome, Kit. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to hear your bio read in front of a lot of people.
You've
like try not to giggle while it's happening. Mostly manage not to do that. But thank you really for having me.
Wonderful. You've done so much.
Oh my God. Just want to open this up. I think I've got a moment here. Open this up before we start doing questions. To spike the football a little bit on behalf of Indiana's LGBTQ people. Indiana has a long and storied history of attacking the LGBTQ community during its legislative session, going back even further than RFRA, but really prominently with RFRA, if you'll recall the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, where Mike Pence, famously, was launched into the stratosphere by going on television and saying that he could not, in fact, guarantee that the RFRA law could be used to discriminate against LGBTQ people, which we all know it could. And luckily we were able to do the work to fix that. And since then, year after year, we come back to the legislature to do that fighting. And this year, I'm just really happy to report that we're not that far from the end of from the adjournment of Indiana's legislative session, about a week out. And we currently don't have any specifically anti-LGBTQ legislation that is moving, unlike the rest of the country, which is experiencing the largest wave of anti-LGBTQ legislation in history, mostly targeted at trans youth on a variety of fronts. It's been really scary to watch. We had a couple of bills that were similar to the ones we're seeing making the rounds, and they thankfully did not move forward this session. So that's my little football spike to open this whole thing out. We did manage to we have managed to hold on, and that's a really great place to be, considering the times.
Absolutely, and we are just so thankful to have you fighting on our behalf in the Hoosier state of Indiana. So we'll get to our questions here. This one is an easy one to open things up. What is giving you positive energy these days, and what are you doing to take care of yourself and make space for joy?
Oh my God. So last weekend, some people will know what ramps are. And I don't mean the things that you like skateboard and do jumps on, but like they're like a wild relative of the leek or onion. And they grow out in the woods about this time of year, and like gourmands are like super into these, and you'll see them on the menus of like hipster restaurants. Well, my brother found the mother lode of them, and we went out into the woods up in Michigan actually, and just picked bags full of them. In fact, after this event, I'm going to have some like wild ramp pasta that I made for dinner. So like that was, so being outside, spending time as my family gets vaccinated, being able to spend time with them and unwind, and being able to spend time with my partner and his daughter. I'm really, like a lot of people who do political work, I am powered by sort of human engagement, which a lot of us who are that way have suffered quite a bit during the pandemic. And so I'm really taking time to allow myself to enjoy bringing human contact back into my life.
Absolutely, definitely. I'm so looking forward to that. Yes, I love it. And I want to try that pasta. Actually, I need the recipe for that.
All right. Let's get in the chat.
Right. Kit, you work closely with the Indiana legislature. What have been some triumphs and challenges of this legislative session? What is a big picture view of what has happened in the Indiana legislative session these past few months?
Yeah, I mean, generally it's been a very weird session. The pandemic has made it strange. The politics that we're seeing emerge during the pandemic has been really strange. Of course, we went in Indiana during last year's elections from a super majority legislature to what we can only really call like a super duper majority red legislature, which, doesn't bode well for a lot of issues, but it's been a real mixed bag and very, very unpredictable. We've seen not a lot of appetite, luckily, this year for sort of attacks on LGBTQ rights. Because we have a really terrible abortion bill moving. We have moving, pregnancy accommodations, which was widely supported by so many people. Accommodations for pregnant workers to be able to ask and get time. That bill, which the governor wanted, the Republican governor wanted, was really just stripped down to nothing, and it isn't a pregnancy accommodations bill at all. Really, it's just in name only. So that's been hard to watch. Some highlights that I would say, it's been nice to see, even though it was watered down in the process, the HIV modernization bill, that's HB 1340, written by Ed Clear, who's a Republican, and who's brought this bill that he's passionate about for a number of years, that would have in its original form decriminalized HIV, would have removed some of the extra criminal penalties associated for transmitting HIV that are very antiquated and still exist in Indiana law, and also cleans up the language, brings it up to a modern sort of person-first language, removes some of the stigmatizing language in Indiana code. Passed in its full form almost unanimously in the Indiana House. I think there were 2 dissenting votes, and moved on to the Senate, and really was stripped there. They stripped it of those. They stripped out the removal of extra criminal penalties, but they did leave in the language update. So we did get that. It's very rare, I think, in Indiana that we see like on stuff like HIV and LGBTQ people, that we see something positive. So I want to take a moment to celebrate that. I want to thank Dr. Carrie Foote of the HIV modernization movement, who's worked so hard on this, and of course Ed Clear for really taking political risk on an issue that he believes in. That's just it's great to see that despite our party lines, there are people who want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you mentioned there was a pregnancy bill that you were really hoping would pass. Could you explain a little bit about what was in that bill and why you were hoping it was going to pass?
Yeah, absolutely. So it would have provided pregnant workers the the right to both to receive accommodation, reasonable accommodation in the workplace if they were pregnant. That could be, change in job duties, extra time, the ability to nurse or to pump milk when you're at work. And it was really just reduced to a bill that simply said that you cannot retaliate against someone for asking for the accommodation. That is where the bill stands now, which is unfortunate because that's largely already true in federal law. The bill really is very empty. There are concerns that it will confuse people, that the people will think they have the right to get pregnancy accommodations and make plans for that, and that when they in fact do not in Indiana. Employers can simply refuse to make reasonable accommodations for their pregnant workers. And in the wake of a pandemic that has seen massive job losses, specifically among women, who have been really hit very hard. Women in the workplace have had to go home to take care of families. We really need to be moving a different direction. We need to be making it easier for women to get back in the workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next question here. What are the priority issues of the LGBTQ Rights Project in terms of policy? How does your team come to these priority issues?
Well, I would say that broadly speaking, our goal is statewide non-discrimination. That's the gold standard. That is, equality for LGBTQ people, specifically in sort of the three areas of civil rights law, which would be public accommodation, that is, places and businesses that do business with the public, housing, that is, everything from getting a mortgage to accessing emergency shelter, and employment, which is getting a job, being discriminated against while you are on the job. We want that to be something that is clearly not in line with our values. It is law that exists for a number of other minority groups, encoded in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So we've had that for a while. I think for us, we would like to see gender identity and sexual orientation sort of expressly, part of the way that we think about civil rights and civil liberties. So that's sort of the gold standard. In the microcosm, our goal is to do everything we can to forward, the civil rights needs of LGBTQ people of all kinds, to make sure that we're looking at all of this through a racial justice lens as well as we do at the ACLU, but to really make sure that whether that's, in municipal policy here in Indianapolis or in other Indiana towns, whether that's during the legislative session here statewide, that we're watching for things that are going to impact the LGBTQ community, whether that's positive or negative, and that we're there to support or to push back where it's necessary to bring sort of the heft of the ACLU in. Very often our goal is defense. Just to be very real, we spend a lot of time killing bills. We have a very good record. Since the start of the LGBTQ Rights Project, we haven't let an anti-LGBTQ bill pass. We like to kill them in committee, and that's that work is made possible by good relationships with people in the legislature, people who know the ACLU, know they can trust us when they tell them that they're opening a can of worms that they don't want to open. And I'm real proud of that work. It's not always the most glamorous, but it's fun.
Yeah. And I think that, your work has definitely helped kill a lot of these bills that would have been harmful to our community. So we really are thankful for you doing that work for us. And I heard the ACLU has developed a tool to track legislation during the legislative session. Would you tell us more about this tool and how it works?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's easy. You go to our website and click on legislation, and you will see a list of everything that we are currently tracking in the session. We keep this every year. It is possible to go back and look at previous years, I believe. Maybe not. I don't want to. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not as technical as I could be, but I will say that the during the current year, you can always check our website to see what issues are moving that particularly impact civil liberties and that we consider like viable pieces of legislation, whether we're opposed to them or for them. There's a lot of stuff that gets filed that is frankly not viable, that we don't spend a lot of time on. But if you see it on our website, it's probable that it's at least moving, and that we're putting energy into either opposing it or supporting it.
Yeah, awesome. That's wonderful. I'll definitely check that out.
One of the great things about it, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
Is when you see the list of bills, you can click on a bill to get more detail about it on our website. You can also, from that detail page, click on it to go to iga.in.gov, which is where, of course, all of the legislative sessions information is housed by Indiana's government, which is another great website and a tool that I'd recommend people who are interested in the process spend some time on.
Definitely. What can we do as individuals or community to be more involved in policy advocacy? What can individual people do to hold lawmakers accountable and be a part of the conversation about important issues?
Oh, I love this conversation. This is that makes my little ACLU heart sing to hear that. I mean, we do want you to be empowered to speak up. We want people to be empowered to know that it is your right as constituents to reach out to your lawmakers. So I'm going to tell you a few things. I'm going to give you a lot of stuff. First, I am going to rep my organization. Make sure you follow us on social media. Get out your, sign up for our email list. We don't spam. We will send out action alerts though about like stuff that we believe it's time for people to take action on. And we are very choosy about how we use that tool. It's been rather busy this year, I will say. But so also I would suggest, along with the ACLU, if there's a specific issue area whether it's civil rights or, infrastructure or anything like that, look around at the local nonprofits that are doing work in that area and follow them. And learn about the issue, because the people who are leading on these issues often know what's going on, and are definitely often better prepared to sort of direct like what would be useful, what kind of actions would be useful. One thing that I would be remiss if I left out is do the boring things. Straight up do the boring things. I think when we think like we're going to get involved, I know I've had to learn that this is not the case myself. We think, well, we're always going to be like in the, up at the front of the rally with a bullhorn. But like real civic engagement is not always that. It can be and often is. But there is another side of civic engagement, which is writing the letter to your senator. And everyone's sick of hearing about that. And I know they would have you often believe that they don't want you to do that they just know and blah, and that they don't like it when we ask our constituents to send them emails. They're like, I can tell those are all from you. But I will tell you something that is very important for people to understand. No, they're not going to read your like 3-page heartfelt term paper. Send them. But what they are going to do is their legislative aide, who is the one who's really reading these emails or looking at the voicemail or opening up the constituent letters, they have a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet on any particular issue, they have a pro and a con column in which they tabulate the constituents that have reached out and what their position was on the issue. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you on anything that's hot, they are doing that. And those numbers are very, very important. Lawmakers do often step away from a ledge if they see an enormous potential backlash. And the only tool we have for letting them know that are those contacts. So yes, it's true that sometimes you get a form letter back from them, and that sucks. I've gotten my form letter after my very impassioned pleas that I knew they would have to read and it would really get to them. But do it anyway, because you are making a difference, albeit a small one. And then don't stop with sending the letter. On whatever issue it is you're reaching out, go and ask 5 of your friends who live in that same lawmaker's district to contact them as well. and then ask them to do the same thing. That's how you build movement.
That is such great information, and I think you're right. I mean, the ACLU can't do this work on its own. We definitely need to step up and do our part as citizens to, make sure that we're supporting the bills that are going to help us and letting them know about the bills that aren't and that we're not pleased. So yeah, I really appreciate that information and how to do that process. Has any state or federal legislation been introduced that affects the trans community? If so, what is the status of that?
Well, there was legislation introduced that would have impacted the trans community. It is in Indiana. It is gone. Thank God. But of course, it is a mirror, a microcosm of what's going on around the country. And I do expect it to come around again next year. I just want to throw that out there. I expect it to come around again next year. I think that that trans people are going to be specifically targeted for a number of years by the opponents of liberty. And I think that is something that we're all going to have to be prepared to stand up for the T and the LGBTQ. It's not going to get easier for a bit. And I want to tell you that federally, yes, there is legislation moving that could provide some redress against all of this. There is the Equality Act. The Equality Act is widely popular, polls very well amongst Americans. It is, however, sort of mired in controversy by people who are, anti-LGBTQ. There's a number of reasons they give for that. Some of the reasons are new, some of them are old. The old one that you see is sort of the religious liberty argument, that you're taking away people's religious liberty if they can't discriminate against people. I think it's fun that argument was never brought up against, well, in fact, it actually was brought up against ethnic minorities back when the Civil Rights when the Civil Rights Act was passed. But you see it really viciously coming up now in ways that I don't think people would be comfortable using against someone who was an LGBTQ, which really steps at the heart of what this is all about. They would like an exception to the 1964 Civil Rights Act in order to discriminate against LGBTQ people. That's what that is all about. That's one issue that you're seeing in sort of opposition to it. And then you're also seeing the sort of invented controversy of transgender athletes, particularly trans girls in school, making the rounds. I forget the number of bans. We've had, I think, 4 bans in the States pass, actually, at this point. The governor of Arkansas, the Republican, very conservative governor who actually signed some anti-trans legislation that same year, actually vetoed the trans girl sports ban because it was too extreme. Some of these bills have provisions that require the trans kids or any kid accused of being trans to have their genitals inspected by school staff. These are roundly unconstitutional bills, clear violations, but some of them stick, and the damage of that discussion is really bad. Hoping that the Equality Act is passed. If folks want to reach out to their lawmakers about that and let them know how they feel, it is important to pass it, because without it, particularly right now, there's some very vulnerable trans people are going to be sort of left hanging in the wind of the aftermath of the discussion of it. Last year we were not sort of targeting trans children the way that we seem to be now culturally, and it's very much because people are, think of the kids as an argument that always works. And unfortunately, they don't think of the trans kids. That's never on the agenda.
Exactly. Yeah, I appreciate that information, and we definitely got to support our trans sisters and brothers and siblings, because as we know, it's getting more visibility. There is that potential for a lot of backlash. So Definitely. Housing issues are common in the LGBTQ plus community as well. Has any state or federal legislation or rules been introduced that would help?
Oh, this is fun. So just call back that the Equality Act would make discrimination in the areas of housing illegal. Really, what it would do is amend the 1964 Civil Rights Act to simply include gender identity and sexual orientation along with all the other groups that are protected by it. So not a lot would change, honestly. Like, that's one of the interesting things I find about it is this is a tried and tested law that has worked for decades. It really doesn't seem like it should be controversial. I will also say that we are really welcoming the rapid movement that the Biden administration has done in removing some of the previous administration's really terrible executive orders around housing specifically. He famously issued guidance to HUD declaring that they could, in fact, discriminate against transgender people seeking housing, and included very disgustingly like actual instructions in the executive order on how to identify trans people so that you could deny them access to your shelter. So that was pretty vicious, and so we really do welcome the new administration seems to have a more civilized approach to housing and is rapidly undoing a lot of the worst stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So housing is, so important right now, especially with the ongoing pandemic. With that said, how has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way that work in or with communities? Sorry about that. I'll read it again. How's the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way that work in or with the community? How has it changed the way you work with lawmakers?
I think I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
I get where we're going with this.
I'm just reading what's on the paper.
I will say that it's obviously changed quite a bit. And the community is what is nearest and dearest to my heart. Everything comes back to that because it's not only what gives us power, the ability to push back, the ability to be involved, but it is also what we get to come back to as sort of the wellspring for our own energy. And it's been a hard year for that, but I want to share a thing. So you mentioned my TEEP program. I'm really proud of it. We have about 40 transgender advocates all over the state in some very rural places, just really covering the waterfront in terms of places in Indiana. These people are community leaders. They're trans. They're doing their best in sometimes impossible situations. They show up for us at the State House. And one interesting change this year was that we couldn't do in-person lobbying. We have a policy. We're not going to ask volunteers to risk their lives to tell old men that they're human. But what we are going to do is support them. And so I really got to spend a lot of what would normally be a season where I was asking a lot of people to like check in with people who I could tell were hurting. And, I got to deliver a bunch of chocolates to people and send out cards and, doing that kind of work of being able to care for one another. And instead of just having to say like, hey, I need you to get to the State House for this committee hearing, that was good. That felt good. And it's important. We do have to take care of each other. So that definitely changed the way I work. And also made me think about how I work in the future, and how important it is to take care of people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Definitely. Now we have a few questions from the audience. So somebody is asking for more information about the Equality Act. What is being done in Indiana to advocate for the Equality Act? And how can individuals get involved and support?
Well, thank you for asking that. We are not specifically running action on the Equality Act here, but I would point you to Freedom for All Americans or the HRC, and they will have information on what they're doing in Indiana regarding convincing, our delegation to vote for the Equality Act.
Nice.
But also, like, write Mike Young, tell him to vote for it.
Right. Get him to vote for it. Yes, pass it. How did the LGBTQ Rights Project get started, and what is your vision for the initiative?
Oh my gosh. I love to talk about the stories, but the way it started was I used to be an organizer for a campaign called Freedom Indiana. Not only did I, but actually our policy director at the ACLU was a deputy director at Freedom Indiana. And that's actually how we met. The problem with Freedom Indiana was that it was a campaign, which means that it comes and goes. And unfortunately in Indiana, there's always an attack. There's always something. And so a campaign wasn't able to be just responsive to, say, a bathroom bill, the way we at the ACLU could be. So we brought a lot of that work in-house, used it to create sort of the LGBTQ Rights Project as a permanent fixture in Indiana, something that could stay between sessions, organize between sessions, be prepared during sessions to push back on sort of those constant attacks. And that is my vision. My vision for that is that the initiative be, to take the space of a group that has the capacity to lobby. So that's one thing that the ACLU brings, is that I'm able to be a lobbyist. My boss is able to be a lobbyist, and not a lot of nonprofits can, because the legal issues there are very complicated, but we're organized as a nonprofit that can do that work. That brings a lot of power into the State House that did not used to exist there. Particularly having, we're both my director and I are queer. We're both members of the community, so we're able to be connected to the community, as well as just, I think a lot of states don't have that, and I'm really proud of that work.
That's great. That's so wonderful. See, what else have we got from the audience here? All right. Does the legislative tracker tool work outside of the active legislative session? Is past legislation passed or failed still available to review once the session is complete?
So our tracker, I don't think it sticks around year to year on our website, but I will tell you that iga.in.gov, which is the state's website, it's the General Assembly's website, does keep bills from year to year. You can go back to almost any session that's still on record and take a look at the process that bills went through. iga.in.gov is a really powerful tool if you're a session watcher. Like, it is how, it's how you can see as bills are scheduled, what committees they're going before, who runs those committees. We use it extensively when we're planning our outreach. And it's open to everybody. So.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. That sounds really cool. Like a really nice resource. Because I always feel like I don't ever know what's coming up, and I want to. So yeah,
I will warn you that it shows you everything. So this is just an expectation setting. Like, if you go to legislation, you'll see every bill that was filed. And some of those bills are bogus. Like, some of them are like. So you might look at the one that says that I'll say the bill that John Jacobs filed that would have made it illegal for kids to transition or to access affirming care, right? John Jacobs is a guy who used to show up at the State House in bloody scrubs to protest abortion. Like, he's not taken seriously.
Yeah.
His bill did not get a hearing. And so we've got a couple other jokers, Bruce Borders from Terre Haute, who actually is an Elvis impersonator, who files some anti-trans stuff every year. It doesn't get a hearing every year. And so you'll see that stuff. And that's why both doing that independent research and definitely getting involved and seeing what's happening is important, but then also following folks like the ACLU for your cues on like what's real and what isn't. Because sometimes you can make something real that wasn't real before if you're not careful. And so we try to be very careful as we're running up and watch the process before we pull the trigger on something that might hurt people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kit and I, we were talking before we started recording about this bill that was going through, that was gaining a lot of traction, where it had us in the library profession a little worried, that librarians could be sued based on the types of books we were putting on the shelves and especially making available to children. And we saw right through this. And Kit, if you want to talk a little bit about, your experience working with that bill.
It sounds like you're on top of it.
Okay, we were just like, we were not having it at the library.
Well, the library system really threw down on that bill. We were really proud to see that. We're happy we were able to raise sort of the flag on it. But it was a very bog standard library censorship bill. SB 288, material harmful to minors. Jim Toombs. So Jim Toombs, the senator who filed it, famously has filed a number of anti-protest bills in the past, including one that would have required police officers to drop anything they were doing if someone was doing a protest that blocked traffic.
Yeah.
And like, no matter what they were doing, they could be saving someone's life with CPR, but like, there's a protest blocking traffic, and Jim needs to get to the State House. So that's the kind of stuff he files. And this one got surprisingly far. I will say that it was for how radical it was. It would have opened up librarians, both in public libraries and school libraries, to lawsuits if a parent found something in that library objectionable. I don't think I could find a library that I couldn't find something that I personally find objectionable in. It may be when standards are different than other people for what's objectionable. But I think we can agree that libraries are repositories of learning, and places where different views should be encountered, and they shouldn't have to fear that they're going to get sued if they if they happen to be running a library, if you happen to be working in a library in a rural town for a book that maybe acknowledges the existence of LGBTQ people, right? Like that is, I think, the fear, and it was a very valid fear. It was definitely something that could have been the result of that bill. So we were happy to see that one die.
Yes, absolutely happy to see that one go away. We have one more audience question. Kit, you do so much to support our community. What other projects or passions are you working on or supporting right now?
Passion projects. I do actually have a lot of passion projects. But a lot of what I'm doing these days is about survival and is about like finding ways to emotionally take care of myself. I mean, I'm going to be really real, like during a time that has been very trying for me, as for everyone. And so reconnecting with family, whether that's my found family or my family, finding ways to spend time with them. I'm also very slowly, eventually releasing my third studio album. I'm still working on it. I do play music on the side like everyone else in the world. I also have a music project. And you can find that on my Facebook page. I no longer have like a personal Facebook account, but I have like a Facebook page, like an artist page. I still don't know how it works, but I know you can find my music there.
So is your artist page the same? Is it still Kit Malone? We search Kit Malone?
Just search for Kit Malone.
All right.
No picture of a guitar.
That's awesome. What kind of music? What style?
I used to call it fractured folk, or it's a little bit like alt country. It's a little bit like it's like Lucinda Williams had sex with Nick Cave and produced a series of albums from her uterus, and that's my music. I can't believe I just said that on this thing.
And I know at least one of those artists, so I think I'm good. Do we have any other questions in the chat? Let's see, we have some comments here. I'm gonna check these out. You got Amy McNeil. She says, "Thank you for fighting for my daughter's rights."
Oh,
you, Amy.
It's so nice to hear nice compliments.
We got Pauline who said, "This is so informative. Thanks for all that you do, kid."
Oh.
Are there any other questions out there? I want to make sure I get. We still have some time here. Oh, here's one from CJ Bowling. Oh yeah, we already asked that one. That was about the.
We got that one.
Projects. I got that one. Okay, here's something from Erica. Here's what Mike Braun is pushing from our state at the federal level. I'm a co-sponsor on 2 pieces of legislation this Congress, which would combat this movement and portions of the Equality Act. First, I'm a co-sponsor on S777, the End Taxpayer Funding of Gender Experimentation Act of 2021, which would prohibit the use of taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment procedures. American taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize medical procedures with which they may have. And that's all I can read of that comment off. I don't know if you have any.
That's all right. Yeah, I know, Erica. He's just the worst. He's just the worst. But honestly, like, good luck getting that heard in the Democratic Congress over the next couple of years, man. Like, good luck to you. Just fly off into the sun. I mean, like, at this point, much of the work that Senator Braun does is targeted specifically at his social media audience, and like, yeah, and that's just right out of the anti-trans, playbook. That legislation has no hope of being heard or being amended into the Equality Act, and he just remains someone who's best laughed at this point.
All right, good to know. Good to know. We got another comment from CJ Bowling. This has been a wonderful experience in learning more about what is going on with the ACLU, KIT, and more. I totally seen Kit at so many events, and I've always just like met her a few times, and it's just like so awesome to share space with you and get to hear more about what you do in politics here in Indiana. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, and just shout out to my ACLU team because I work with the best people with the biggest hearts, and we go through this horrible nightmare for the first few months of every single year together and still manage to laugh about it at the end. And it's a real privilege to have them as colleagues.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments while we still have Kit? Well, definitely be sure to follow Indy Pride on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more updates on community events and programming. Kit, do you have any closing remarks for us?
I think that's it. Just, stay connected. Go, check out the ACLU's website, follow us on social media, and make sure that we don't let these people do the kind of things that they try to do in silence. Like, keep your eyes on us, keep your eyes on the ball. And I appreciate everybody tuning in.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone for joining the event. Our next Indy Pride Education Series event will be a part of our Pride Season event in June. So stay tuned to our social media channels at Indy Pride for upcoming event announcements. We would love to hear your feedback on this program and know what topics you would like to see for future events. Take 2 minutes for a chance to win a $25 gift card from Silver in the City. The link is in the survey. Oh my God! Yeah, so I just bought like one of those pup wallets from there, and it is still going strong. I love it.
I want one of those big bags, just as social justice bragging rights. Have those big bags. Like, oh yeah, it's one of those pup bags. I got a pup bag. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, they're so stylish too, for sure. The link to take this survey can be found in the comment box. Did you know that Indy Pride membership is now free to join? You can join our membership program today by signing up for our website. Go to indypride.org/membership, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Kit Malone. It's been a pleasure sharing
Thank
space
you.
with you digitally.
Aw. All right.
And I can't wait to share physical space with everyone again.
Soon. Oh, there we go.